Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss about performance of computers. Actually, assessing the performance of computer can be quite challenging. The scale and intricacy of a modern software system, together with the wide range of performance improvement techniques employed by hardware designers, have made performance assessment much more difficult. Actually, if we want to compare the performance of two different systems when trying to choose among different computers, performance is an important attribute. Accurately measuring and comparing different computer is critical to purchasers. Therefore, it is difficult to designers also. Actually, the selling people of these computers know this well. Often, the salespeople would like you to see their computer in the best possible light only. Hence, understanding how best to measure performance and the limitations of performance measurement is important in selecting a computer. So in this topic, we will be describing about the metrics for measuring performance from the viewpoint of both a computer user and as a designer. And also we will be seeing how these metrics are related uh, and present the classical processor performance equations also. We will be seeing a set of three equations through which we will be seeing how we can able to calculate the performance of a computer. When we say one computer has better performance than other, actually what we do mean in that. So I will explain it through an example. If you see uh, actually the list contains some typical passenger aeroplanes together with their passenger capacity, cruise range, cruise speed, passenger throughput, etc. If we want to know which of these planes in this table had the best performance, we would first need to determine or as well as define what is performance. For example, considering different measures of performance, we see that the plane with the highest cruising capacity, the highest cruising capacity, Boeing 747, and from the final uh, column you can able to understand the passenger throughput also high. In other way, if you see the cruise speed, the Concorde will be having the highest cruise speed. In the performance way, if you look for cruise speed, we can able to conclude Concorde is the best. If you see the passenger capacity and throughput, Boeing 747 will be the best. Let us suppose we define performance in terms of speed. Uh, this still leaves two possible definitions. So you could define the fast plane as the one with the highest cruising speed, taking a single passenger from one point to another in the least time. So if you see the Concorde, but its capacity is very less. So, if you were interested in transporting 450 passengers from one point to another, however, the 747 would be clearly be the fastest. As the last column of the figure shows, it has the passenger throughput high. Likewise, these two parameters are very important at the time when we uh, discuss about the performance of a system. First one is response time. The response time defines the time taken by a computer to complete a particular task. For example, if we are giving an input to a system and it is providing an output, the time taken by the system to process the input and provide the output is known as response time. Throughput. Throughput is, for example, the number of tasks a computer can complete over a period of time is known as throughput. The number of tasks a computer can handle over a period of time. For example, if you are running a program on two different desktop computers, you would say that the faster one is the desktop computer that gets the job done first. you are going to give the same task to two different computers at that time, the one which complete the task first will be having the lowest response time and the performance high. But if you were running a data center like this, um, that had several servers running jobs submitted by many users, you would say that the faster computer was the one that completed the most jobs during a day. As an individual, so you are interested in reducing the response time. As an individual computer user, so you will be looking on to a computer which is having the lesser response time, so that the performance will be very high. So I'm going to give two scenarios. At that time, for that we can able to discuss how this response time and throughput is going to get changed. For example, you are working with an i3 processor system. The scenario one is, I am going to replace the i3 processor with a faster version i7 processor. Now we have to see what is happening to the response time and throughput. As we are replacing with the faster version, obviously response time will be very improved, or response time get decreased and the performance will be improved. So you can able to tell the response time is getting improved. Actually response time is decreasing. The term what we have to use to explain is response time is improved. As the response time got improved, the number of tasks that a processor can handle also get increases, so throughput also get increases. So many number of tasks can be completed over a stipulated time compared to the old processor. The second scenario is, I'm going to add, I'm not going to replace the processor. I'm working with the same i3 processor. I'm going to use or multiple i3 processor inside the same system. Now I have to check what is happening to the response time and throughput. In this case, I didn't even change the processor. The same processor only I have replicated or duplicated, so many same type of processor I have used. Response time of the processor is nowhere changed. But as it can able to parallelly take on multiple tasks, so obviously throughput will increase in the second scenario. So the equation relating performance as and response time, otherwise execution time, is performance is indirectly proportional to execution time. From this equation, execution time is same as response time. As from this equation, as my execution time is very less, so you will be having better performance to your system. Relative performance. For example, you are going to compare two different computers. One is X and one is Y. Initially, we are assuming that performance of X is greater than performance of Y. So we can able to say performance of X is n times than performance of Y from this equation. So performance of X is n times than performance of Y. In terms of execution time, so 1 by execution time of X greater than 1 by execution time of Y. So if you cross multiply execution time Y greater than execution time X, it's obvious, right? If the performance is high means execution time will be less. If performance is low means execution time will be high. So from this equation you can able to conclude that execution time of Y is n times than execution time of X. So we can relate this performance and execution time using this particular equation. For example, you have two different computers, one is A and B. A is having execution time 10 and B is having an execution time 15. From this given parameter itself, we can able to conclude that A is faster as its execution time is very less. But the question is, how much A is faster than B? So from the relative performance equation, so we can able to substitute the value for B and A execution time. So 15 by 10. So you can able to conclude our system A is 1.5 times faster than system B. CPU execution time. The time is the measure of computer performance. The computer that performs the same amount of work in the least time is the fastest one, as we know. So time can be defined in different ways depending on what we count. The straightforward definition is our response time. Actually, the response time means the total time to complete a task, including disk access, memory access, input output activities, and operating system overhead. Actually, CPU execution time is also known as CPU time. CPU time is equal to the time taken by the CPU to complete or process the task, that is the user CPU time, plus the background thing, the memory access and input output activities, disk access, operating system overhead, all that coming under system CPU time. For example, as we have seen already, for example, if you want to a processor want to execute a particular instruction, so it has to initially fetch the instruction from the main memory, and your control unit will decode the instruction, and arithmetic and logic unit will do the processing of that instruction with respect to the signal from the control unit. So before that, the data to be processed has to be loaded to the registers. All are under the CPU time, and user CPU time is the time taken by the ALU to complete that task, is known as user CPU time. So combinedly, the CPU time will contain the task completion time as well as the related access time of memory as well as input output activities. So this is the general expression of CPU time or execution time. So we can able to give the general expression for the CPU execution time of for a program is equal to CPU clock cycle for a program into clock cycle time. So this is the number of clock cycles required for execution of the all the instructions available in the program into this is the clock period or clock length or clock duration. So actually the clock period is 1 by clock rate, right? So you can able to modify the equation like this. So execution time of a program equal to number of clock cycle required for a program divided by clock rate. Clock rate is actually the clock frequency. So here, this is the equation relating execution time as well as clock cycle of a program. So instead of clock cycle, so if they have specified only the number of instructions as well as average number of clock cycle required for executing each and every instruction, means the equation will be modified like this. So you have to find the expression for clock cycles, how to calculate the clock cycle for that particular program. So equation is, so CPU clock cycle equal to instructions of a program. So a program can contain number of instructions. Here they are specifying the number of the count of the instructions available in the program into average clock cycle per instruction. For example, if you have 10 number of instruction in your program, all the instruction may not use the same number of or same clock cycles for executing the program. For example, if you are using an arithmetic operation, assuming that all the data are available in the register itself, at that time it requires less clock cycle. Sometimes in such cases, you may need to access the data from the memory. After that only you may process the instructions. So at that time, the number of clock cycle required for executing that instruction will be higher. So we will be calculating the average clock cycle for per instruction based on the all the instructions. Based on that only we will be calculating the CPU clock cycle. This average clock cycle per instruction is known as CPI, clock cycle per instruction. So by substituting this equation in this particular equation, you can remodify this equation for calculating the execution time is equal to instruction count, the number of instruction available in the program, into average clock cycle per instruction divided by clock rate. So this is the equations. These are all the three different equation. One is the general equation, performance equal to 1 by execution time, that is the first equation. Then relative performance was the second equation. Third equation is the equation relating CPU execution time and clock cycles. Fourth equation is the CPU time in with respect to instruction count. These four equations are very necessary to calculate the performance of a computer system. The next topic what we have to see is power. Actually, the power is very important term while discussing every computer system. Actually, the power dissipation plays a vital role in all the digital system, as we are seeing a low power design as the evolution of VLSI technology. You might have seen that the input voltage or input power required for processing an device is getting decreased day by day as technology progresses. That you might have experienced directly in the laboratory itself. So if you compare an electronic laboratory, if you have a power transistor, means it need a minimum 40 volt input supply. So if you take any BJT, so if it need 18 to 20 volt input voltage. So if you see any LIC lab, so you might have worked with the operational amplifier, op-amp. It requires 12 volt input supply. So if you take digital electronic lab, all the chips, IC, digital ICs, it requires 5 volt. So if you compare the latest technology like your smartphones, if you see the battery specifications, so it ranges from 1.8 to 3.3 volt. As technology evolved, the amount of input voltage as well as input power required for operating that particular device is getting decreased. This is due to the VLSI technology evolution. Based on that only our the area miniaturization also happening. So that's why the power dissipation in that particular device has to be monitored while designing a device. A power dissipation contain both the static power dissipation as well as dynamic power dissipation. So I am not interested in discussing static power dissipation because we can't able to reduce static power dissipation after the device is manufactured. So static power dissipation is only in the hand of designer as well as manufacturer. They can able to take the control over static power dissipation. But dynamic power dissipation, this is a very famous equation related to low power design. Dynamic power dissipation equal to alpha C V squared F. Alpha is activity factor, C is the capacitive load or load capacitance, V is the input voltage, F is the clock frequency. Alpha is the activity factor which is related to the clock. Actually, you may have two different clock in your design. One is periodic clock, another one is aperiodic clock. So depending on that, this alpha value can vary from 0.5 to 1. So if we use a periodic clock, so you can able to reduce the dynamic power dissipation by alpha having the lowest value 0.5. So if you see second parameter capacitance, load capacitance is based on the technology what we are using for designing your system. For example, if you are using a CMOS technology, you will be having NMOSes and PMOSes. So PMOS size will be larger than NMOS. So based on the dimension, the WL ratio of transistor, your load capacitance value also depend on that only. So if you have n number of NMOSes in your system, n number of PMOSes in your system, obviously the load capacitance value will be very high. So you need to find an alternative technology. If you see in VLSI technology, you can able to see n number of recent advancements like BiCMOS, multiple threshold voltage transistor, and dynamic CMOS, photodynamic, pseudo NMOSes. So by finding the apt technology, you can able to reduce the capacitance effect in the system. As the capacitance value decreases, your dynamic power dissipation also decreases. But this next 2 points, voltage as well as clock. These two parameters are fixed for a particular design. For example, if a device want to, if design is intended for operating in a operating voltage of 5 volts, means you can't able to reduce that 5 volt. For example, you may have a tube light in your house, so it need a 230 volt input voltage. You can't able to reduce that 230 voltage, it won't work. But if you could be able to reduce the input voltage, you can able to reduce the dynamic power quadratic times. It can able to achieve only by choosing the appropriate operating modes. For example, if you are using a laptop, you can able to operate that laptop by connecting it into 230 volt power supply. At that time input voltage will be 230. So alternatively, you can able to use the battery power also. At that time input voltage is only 12 volt. By choosing the appropriate operating mode, you can able to reduce the supply voltage. Apart from that, you can't able to do anything related to supply voltage. Second one is frequency. Frequency is also fixed for that particular design. For example, if you are purchasing a laptop with 3 gigahertz clock rate, that clock rate is fixed for that particular system. You can't able to reduce that. But by choosing the appropriate hardware unit, for example, you have a hardware unit in your system, so it is doing a particular task in a single clock cycle, for example. But if you could able to replace that hardware with two different hardwares which can work twice faster than the previous one, at that time each and every hardware requires only half of the clock cycle to complete the task. So if we could able to improve the depth of the parallelism, depending on the depth of the parallelism, that much amount of clock rate can be saved. That is the only way you can able to reduce the clock rate. So thank you for listening.